CL 650 presents your source for leading-edge news and information on today's hottest products and services. This is Experts on Call.
Good evening and welcome to QuayPacificStrataLife on Experts on Call on CIL 650. I'm Tony Giaventu, your host, and I'm the Executive Director of the Condominium Homeowners Association of British Columbia. If you'd like any resources, we have a load of information bulletins and guides available on the CHOA website at www.choa.bc.ca. This evening in the studio, I'm really pleased to welcome Gordon Lee, who is the broker from CMW Insurance, and Adrian Murray, who is a lawyer with Hammerberg and Associates. Welcome to you both to the studio.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you. Good evening.
We're obviously going to talk about insurance. We're going to talk about what the Act requires that we do. We're going to talk about how insurance works. We're going to talk about what the claims happen, and then, of course, we'll talk about some scenarios to give us a sense of how these things really work. Gord, as a broker, it's either a strata counsel that'll come to you or a property manager. What's the role of a broker? Just to give people an idea what the relationship is in all of this.
Our main thing is to give advice, provide advice, provide information, and also, part of it, for most people, they think that, we're just going to shop it, so we're going to go to broker and try to get price. But besides, shopping for price, stuff we do is, making sure we get the right coverages. We're placing with the right companies, and what I mean by that is sometimes it's not just an insurance company, but what is their financial rating? Are they able to have the obligation to pay those claims in the event of loss? What is a claim service like? Are they going to pay the claims, or are they a company that denies? So we have to put all that together to make sure that you're getting the best product for the value, coverage, claims, the whole product, and then we then present that to the client. On top of that, we also have to make sure that we get the proper coverages in place, right? What is covered, what is not. Not all policies are the same, and not all insurance companies agree on the same coverages just because their point of view on it. So, at CMW, for example, what we do is we put together manuscript wording which provides the best coverage that's available out there to the strata corporations. So, where most companies, I'll give you one example, is like a lot of companies don't like to provide coverage for, and will exclude what they call illegal acts coverage.
Right.
And in those cases, if someone has a grow up, say the thing causes tons of damage to the strata corporation, those policies will have this exclusion. So, well, that's an illegal acts not covered. We don't have that in the policy because we understand that a strata corporation has some limitation in controlling that, right? They try to do what they do, but within a unit, you can't really go in and inspect it or do anything. So if there's no suspicion something happened like that, we got to make sure the strata corporation is protected.
Right.
So that's important. So that's one example. But there's many other things that we put together in these wordings to make sure that the strata's well covered.
So in that relationship, Adrian, the strata counsel or the property manager goes to the broker to buy insurance. But how do they know what they're supposed to buy? That's the million-dollar question I think a lot of people ask.
Well, and it's covered under the Strata Property Act. So we go right to Section 149 of the Act, and that's the first place that a strata counsel and the strata manager should look. It tells us that the strata corporation must obtain and maintain insurance on their common property, any common assets they have, buildings shown on the strata plan, and fixtures built or installed in a strata lot if they were built or installed by the owner developer. So you break that down, and essentially when you take that into a broker will know essentially what the strata is looking for. The Act also tells us that it has to have full replacement value on its property insurance, and that it needs $2 million in liability. There's a difference between bare land and building stratas, and so the first thing the strata has to be aware of is whether it is a bare land or building, and it determines that very quickly by looking at the strata plan, because that's important information for the broker. And then once that's resolved, then the determination of what needs to be covered, so the Act gives us the minimum, and stratas then can talk about what additional insurance there'll be. Boiler insurance, there'll be all sorts of things that the strata is going to, some stratas may need and others may not. A townhouse development, for example, will be really very basic in its insurance need. Multi-building high-rise, again, a different scenario. I think Gord would agree that those are completely different types of scenarios for which insurance is needed, and that's where the broker is going to be explaining what's appropriate.
Yeah, well, exactly. We go from a duplex, which is going to be a simple, conventional 2-unit residential home, but it's still a strata if it's strata titled, and it still will fall under the Strata Property Act, requiring the same insurance, all the way up to maybe a strata development that's a bare land or a mixed-use development that may have a golf course, may have a marina, there may be commercial property on it. The combinations of stratas within this province are everywhere on the spectrum. So it must make your job as a broker fairly daunting sometimes.
Yeah, it does. Like when you talk about, I've seen stratas with a golf course and a marina, townhouse complex, and so, easy. I think most people would agree and would understand that insurance can be by far vastly different than a duplex that basically, comes to us and say we need some insurance for that, right? Because we got to have the marina liability. We got to have some coverage for this golf course,
If they have alcohol.
Absolutely, yeah.
It changes things again. Well, and it's interesting that you mentioned duplex, because I think that's probably an important thing to stress as well. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to, including realtors, who own or sell duplexes, who don't understand that if the duplex, if it's created by strata, that the insurance is in the name of the strata corporation.
Right.
And individuals in a duplex will believe that they each can buy their own insurance, and that's not the case because the Strata Property Act applies. So that's a good example to start with, because it's basically your lowest end of simplicity,
right,
when we're talking strata, but it's still very much a strata if it's been created by strata plan. Not every duplex is, but if it's created by strata plan, it's a strata. The insurance needs to be in the name of the strata corporation. Everything I just read in terms of, or gave you in terms of what the Act requires, applies to a duplex.
Well, and you mentioned bare land stratas, and there are many small bare land stratas in this province that look like a little conventional neighborhood. They look like a city block. They look like a little wee development. People get into the impression that there may be only 5 or 10 or 15 units. It's a little bare land strata. They're told that it's just like living in your own home. There's nothing else. And these communities forget they're a strata. They forget to buy insurance, and yet they forget they have collective liabilities. They're not insuring for the same things, but they still have this obligation to maintain insurance for the strata.
Well, fortunately, in a bare land strata, they only need, in terms of property insurance, they're insuring buildings on a strata plan. And if they don't have recreational buildings, then chances are there won't be any buildings on the strata plan. So that's at least one benefit, where the individuals then will be buying their own insurance if it's a bare land strata. But there's still a need for insurance in the name of the strata corporation.
We see a lot of issues with that, actually, where people are confused, where you get actually individual owners saying, well, I'm in a strata, my building must be insured. And they don't have insurance on the building. And
right.
We've had claims come in, and they call and say, well, with this water damage in a building, we need to put a claim through. And we said, this is a bare land strata. We don't actually insure your building.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so sorry. So
right.
you get that confusion both ways, where they think the strata is insured, or they're thinking, well, I need to insure it on a duplex, where really that's a strata. You can't insure just your own side. It's under the owner's strata plan, which is the whole building.
Right. And that sadly is not an uncommon complaint, where people who've moved into a bare land assume that the strata's insurance covers their homes as well. Is it possible for a strata to insure for the houses that are not shown on the strata plan in a bare land strata? Because that's the other problem we have, is that the strata corporation will actually try to buy policies that cover.
I have some policies in place like that, and the only reason we do it, and usually is on these older strata plans, which are bare land strata, but they're not all single detached homes. There's a lot of duplex, triplexes where they've built on this strata, and from day one they've insured it that way. So they've asked us, can we not insure it as a strata because it's a bare land strata? And so we kind of go, well, if you can arrange your insurance. But on the problem issue is going to have, if you have a fourplex that's tied in together, you got to make sure that each individual unit owner can place their own insurance. And the guys in the middle,
Right.
You're sharing some common wall issue. So
Right.
so we've had it where, some have been able to do that. Some says, no, we just want to keep it under a strata policy and let the owners know we're looking after the insurance, even though it's a bare land strata.
So if we go back to the Act, though, Adrian, this is where we get two people in a room, we're going to get two opinions. If we go back to the Act, though, and a bare land strata, the strata has no interest in buildings not shown on the strata plan. So how do they insure for something they have no interest in?
That's exactly the issue, I think, and that's one of the problems that we see is there's no insurable interest in the strata corporation in any building on a bare land strata plan. So that's and certainly, I've been involved in situations where, just as Gord's saying, the strata wants to buy the insurance. We've had, in some cases, written confirmation from the insurer that, notwithstanding that it is a bare land strata, they will cover that building, and
Right.
they sort of, it's a bit gray around the
Yes.
edges, but we get something in writing. But at a minimum, I'd want to see something from the insurance company that we don't run into an event when there has been a claim where the insurance company now looks at this and says, no, this isn't at all valid because there's no insurable interest.
Which
So-
is, and if that's been placed like that as a result of that, that's where the liability falls to the broker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something, so, definitely it's our job to explain that to the insurance company right up front that, like, it's owned a strata plan, but technically if you look on a strata plan, they don't own these buildings, but we're going to insure it that way because this is the reason. If they agree to it, then generally, well, I've never seen an issue of them paying the claim. The other issue probably you could argue legally probably, so when the payment comes, it's going to be, if it's paid out to the restoration or whatever, it's going to be the loss payable, the owner's a strata plan, and then you got to reimburse the individual unit owner. So just administration of it does get a little bit more complex in that case if
So
it's not done properly.
So this gets into a good discussion because I'm going to bait you into a question here. Stratas, because they're commercial properties, have the privilege of overland flood insurance in British Columbia.
Yes.
Generally across the country. That's one of the benefits. Bare land stratas, townhouse complexes, are in floodplains across the province everywhere. But if you're in a bare land strata and the strata is insured for the houses, if you're paying the money back to the strata, if there's a claim as a result of this, the strata would reimburse that to the owners based on unit entitlement, but yet you may have a diversity of value where one house is worth $400,000 and another one is worth $100,000. And so you now have this incredible economic disparity that occurs. I think it's one of the serious problems that we have when stratas start assuming responsibilities that they really don't have the authority for. It's, so we'll come back to that though, because I think it creates some real complications for the industry, just trying to understand worst case scenario, because that's what insurance is about, right? It's the sudden loss and the worst case scenario. It covers us, but that's when the legality, the relationships, and the responsibilities really get put to the test.
Fortunately, though, I think those circumstances are not the norm.
Yes.
The norm are building stratas fighting about who's insuring it, who's paying the deductible, and who's going to fix it if it breaks. So yeah, that's the bulk of our
or it's below
work.
the deductible. Why am I responsible to repair it? When really, if it's insurance claim, the strata is going to make the claim on the strata.
No end to those disputes.
Exactly. We'll come right back to those just after this break. You're listening to QuayPacificStrataLife on Experts on Call.
There's still more ahead with Experts on Call on CL 650.